Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream of the Guest EdTech Virtual Summit Dubai. We're delighted to have you join us and would like to thank you for watching. A few bits of information about the live session before we get underway. There's a chat panel located on the right-hand side of the GRIP platform. Please feel free to ask us any questions, and our lovely moderator will get back to you. And we'll do our best to pass these along to the speaker. Please note that because they are moderated, there may be a slight delay in your question or answer showing. We'll do our very best to get through them all, but if we don't manage to, don't worry, as they're all saved in our system and we'll get back to you after the event. Within the conference screen here, there's also a panel where handouts will be showing. If you want to watch the session again, we'll be uploading the recording here and also after the event on the Guest Education YouTube channel. We're on social media during the summit, so if you want to connect there, follow us at Guest Education on Twitter and use the hashtag GuestEdTech. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to our first speaker of the live program, the fantastic Mark Anderson, ICT Evangelist, who will be delivering an inspiring keynote, Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. We hope that you enjoy the session, and over to you, Mark.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Danny, and welcome to another day of fantastic sharing and learning at the Guest EdTech event. Thank you so much for inviting me to present and share here as well. All the team at Guest, thank you very much. It's a real privilege, and quite frankly, this presentation has been quite difficult for me actually, because it's really caused me to reflect on my career, where I am, where I've come from, who's inspired me, all these kind of things. So in a break from presentations that I would normally give, and certainly there's going to be plenty of takeaways for you to think about and reflect upon in your own sort of practice and pedagogy and leadership. But yeah, it's been quite a difficult presentation to create and run through. So I really hope you enjoy it. I really hope it resonates with you. Just like Danny said, please do tweet me as well if you're going to be using Twitter, at ICT Evangelist. But as many people will have said a number of times in sort of last 9 to 10 months, I'm going to share my screen and hopefully it'll all come through. Any problems, Danny, please do let me know. So I'm going to bring my presentation up now, and I've called it Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. Some of you may recognize this view. This is a photo I took a few years ago whilst up on Jebel Hafit, just outside Al Ain. And I thought it really reflected, you know, not only a fantastic view, but the message about standing on the shoulders of giants. It was originally the sort of full quote, as it were, as if I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Now, this is a phrase that is attributed to Isaac Newton, but the history of the phrase goes back even further. In fact, it goes sort of right back to sort of 1159 in a letter written by John of Salisbury, where he referenced Bernard of Chartres, talking about, again, the same sort of thing. You know, the fact that we do better, the fact that we've progressed, and the fact that new things have happened is because we've learned from others. And so that's the sort of thinking behind the adage that we have seen further because we've stood on the shoulders of giants. And certainly that is something which really resonates with me, and something which I'm going to try and unpick a bit further as I move through this presentation. It's important as well when we're thinking about the giants who've inspired us that we attribute them as well. And so I'm hoping to reference a whole load of people who've inspired me in some of the things that I've done over the years during the course of this presentation. So my name's Mark Anderson, and I'm really fortunate to have had a fantastic career. I'm in my mid-40s now. I started teaching way back in 97, started my teaching degree in 1993. I did a 4-year BEd, and during the time that I've worked in education, and education is such a force for good. I love the job. Teaching is the best job in the world, and I miss it massively. But the work I do now sees me being able to work with schools all over the world. I've worked with many schools in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and other areas within the Emirates. And it's not just in the Emirates that I've worked. I work all over the world, and it's a real privilege to do so. But I wouldn't be able to do what I do now if I wasn't inspired by lots and lots of people. You know, I started out my life, my dad worked in factories, my mum was a home help, helping old people and supporting them. There's me, age 0, with my mum and dad on a beach. Yeah, it's been you know, amazing journey through my life. How some young lad who was sort of brought up from working class background could get to do the sort of things that I'm doing in my career and professionally now is quite amazing. I feel so privileged and lucky to be able to do the things I do now. There's me age 3 and an age 4. But, you know, I wouldn't be able to do what I do now if I hadn't been inspired and been able to stand on the shoulders of giants. And I'm sure there are many people in your careers who've inspired you. It may well have been a teacher who taught you, who inspired you to become a teacher. I remember Mr. Matthews and Mrs. Barnes, who were hugely influential in my desire to become a teacher when I was a kid myself. And as a child in all of us, you know, we all, one of the facets which really makes things quite difficult for teachers and leaders who end up having to share and present and you know, kudos to everybody who is sharing across the 3 days of learning and sharing at the Guest EdTech event, because it is very, very difficult to stand up in front of others and present and share. And there's absolutely a child in all of us. And we teach these children every single day in our schools, whether they're 3 or 13 or other ages. You know, it's really important, I think, that we as educators work hard to inspire the next generation of young people. And as I reach my sort of middle age in my mid 40s, I look to those who are early entry in their career, and I'm just amazed at how inspiring and brilliant the ideas and resourcefulness and creativity of those young people coming into the profession. I'm really privileged to work with lots of fantastic organisations. I remember recently working with the University of Worcester with their PGCE trainees, 300 teachers. And all you know, keen and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, as you would say, getting ready to embark upon a career in education. And I'm just so lucky to be able to do what I do now. But looking back at these young people coming into the profession, what can we do in our roles to really inspire these younger teachers to greater things, to build on the capacity that we've already developed ourselves to do even better than we have ourselves. So how did I go about doing it? Well, this is a photograph taken at a conference in Bristol at the University of West England, taken in 2012, as you can see there. The keynote being delivered there was a gentleman called Tim Rylands. Here is another picture of Tim a year later. He was presenting at a Teach Meet that I'd organised at my school. On the left, you can see Howell Roberts. On the right-hand side, you can see Nina Jackson, Music Mind. Both were presenting at the Teach Meet as well. But Tim, unfortunately, no longer with us. He passed away in 2017. But Tim was hugely influential on my work, my practice, what I did. He was somebody who inspired tens, if not hundreds of thousands of teachers around the world. And, you know, I looked at the work he was doing, and I'd seen him present at the same conference a year before, and it was him who inspired me to start sharing and writing and blogging. And if it wasn't for Tim, you know, inspiring me to start blogging, inspiring me to start sharing on social media, using Twitter, connecting with other educators, all those sorts of things, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. And, you know, the impact of the work that I do the world over, you know, it wouldn't have happened. I would still be a teacher. Not that there's anything wrong with that role whatsoever. But I really wanted to pay homage to Tim and how he inspired me to start my journey sharing like I do. And so by referencing Tim, what I'm hoping to do is to give you some other sort of things and thinkings about who inspires you and what you can do. And inspiration comes in lots of different ways. Now, I am no chemist, but if you do know me and the things that I share on social media, you'll know that I'm not afraid to sort of represent a periodic table or two. Here's one I made a few years ago, a periodic table of people to follow on Twitter. This wasn't the first periodic table that I actually made. I've made lots of them over the years. Here's another one that I made earlier this year of educational books to read today. In fact, it was an American who gave me the idea for doing periodic tables for these sorts of things back 6 or 7 years ago, Sean Junkins. Just like Sean, and I mentioned attribution being important, in the right-hand corner, you can see the Creative Commons license that I put onto all of my work. I'm always very happy for people to take my work and share it and remix it and all those different things. But just like I'm paying homage to Tim and the inspiration that he gave me, and there are many, many others who've inspired me over the years as well. But just as it's important to pay homage to Tim through mentioning him, for example, now in this presentation, it's also important that as educators, we also reference and pay homage to those people who've inspired us with the things that we do as well. And it's not just about the things that we do. Here's somebody some of you might recognize wearing yet another pair of VR goggles here. Steve Banbury, hugely influential in the region, someone who I am very lucky to call a friend. This is us in Berlin working together at an Apple event there back a few years ago. But I often share about education being a force for good, and standing on the shoulders of giants, Steve is an absolute giant when it comes to knowledge about teaching and learning and using technology. Hugely inspirational in what he does, and I remember when he first spoke to me about thinking about getting himself his first VR headset, and being so amazed with things like Google Tilt Brush and all of these different things. And so he and I decided to work together on another periodic table. Here's one here, which is iOS apps for AR and VR, and I was really pleased to work on this project with Steve. We've actually made 2 of these. The last time I looked, which was some time ago, but these tables not only get printed out and put into schools and staff rooms and are included in CPD libraries and all these different things. But just looking at the statistics on ThingLink, it's had hundreds of thousands of visits and people sharing this resource. And it's just amazing to think that, some guy from Essex, that's Steve, and some guy from the southwest of England, that's me, can actually create something that enables people to be not only inspired, but open their eyes to the potential and possibilities when it comes to thinking around teaching and learning with technology. It's no small wonder that Steve has won as many awards as he had, just for example, through the Guest Awards, for his innovations and his inspirational teaching and sharing. There are lots of them. This is the first one that I did, and it's a great idea. It really resonates. It's a lovely layout, and they are hard work. But what's joyful about this is the ability to be able to share and do things which elevate the profession, which make us all more knowledgeable of the tools that are around us and all of these things, and ultimately helping teachers support learners with access to even better technology. And what was great on the project as well with Steve and the other ones, those periodic table of books, for example, it took a lot of reading, but all of those books were read by me. I didn't put things onto the table or any of the tables I haven't used myself in one way, shape or form. And that was what we did, Steve and I, with this. These are all tools that we've used with others in supporting them in our own classrooms and beyond. So it's been a real privilege to work with Steve. But again, in a world where we stand on the shoulders of giants, I don't mind putting my hand up and saying there is no way that I would have been able to do this particular project if it wasn't for the hard work of Steve. We really did collaborate well on it. But in a world where education is a force for good, there's definitely more that unites us than divides us. And by working together, by collaborating and all these things, we can do better, not only by each other, but more importantly, by the young people that we work with. As I say, I've made many of these different tables, and if you do like them, my website's ictevangelist.com, and you can download all of these. Just search for the word periodic, and they will all come flying up for you to have a look at. But it isn't all just about periodic tables that inspire you and all the rest of it. I want to share with you a diagram that was delivered, first of all, in a presentation at a conference in Washington back in 1991, where Nosto talked about change management. And the way that Nosto presented the ideas around change management really, really inspired me. In Nosto's presentation, they shared about how vision, skills, incentives, resources, and a clear action plan are really, really important when it comes to thinking about how you can manage change in an organization. If you consider all of these different things, Noster purported that it would lead to success. What was lovely about the diagram that Noster shared was the fact that if you remove one of these things, so let's say, for example, we remove the action plan, then that would lead to false starts. If you were to not think about your resources, then people in your organization would be frustrated. If you don't incentivize colleagues, then you'll face resistance. If you don't support them with their skills to facilitate the management of change through to the new normal, for want of better words, then you're likely to see anxiety in your staff. And if you don't have a vision, then people are going to be confused. Now, this way of presenting things to help change management processes really, really inspired me. It got me really thinking about how actually we can think differently about lots of different things. And so when in the work that I do with schools and speaking at events such as the Guest EdTech Virtual Summit today, I often share developed versions of these. Here's me presenting at a conference in Zurich a few years ago with what I called my recipe for success when it comes to sort of embedding strong technology in your organization. And I know at the Guest EdTech event, and we've got Apple Distinguished Schools sharing how they've become Apple Distinguished and the processes they've gone through. But in one of their books, The 8 Elements of Success, a few years ago, taking on board things from my school and other schools, Apple developed this book, The 8 Elements of Success, to getting real impact and deep impact with the use of technology in your school. And when trying to explain these things to others, it was Noster's diagram which really resonated. It made me think carefully about how I could actually share these things back through to those schools and people that I was working with. And so in this example, if you don't consider learning, then obviously you fail because learning is so important. If you don't measure your success, then how do you know if you've been successful? If you don't provide CPD, then people become anxious. If you don't think about your environment, the Wi-Fi and the rooms you work in and lighting and all these things, that can lead to frustration, so forth and so on. I don't need to read through the whole diagram to explain it to you precisely. But it led me to thinking about how we could do these things in other ways. This year has been difficult the world over. And so back when we were thinking about how we could make things work when schools went down to lockdown, I started working on a new version of this recipe. And this is the one I created around remote and hybrid learning. Now, you'll notice that some of the things which are included in that original diagram that I showed you with those 8 elements still feature here. CPD, still super important. If teachers aren't provided with decent ongoing support with their use of technology and around teaching and learning with or without technology, then they'll face anxiety. So if you consider all those things in a top row, consistency of approach, a blended model of asynchronous and synchronous, making sure that the things that you're providing are accessible, making sure there's a strong triangulation between school, child and home with parent support and communications. And that's not just about letting parents know about what their child has to do, but also supporting them if they're supporting from home while they're all under lockdown, making sure that parents are aware of how to log on to Teams, for example, or how to best support their children with their learning, so forth and so on. Access is important as well. Not every household has access to actual technology that a child can sit at and work with throughout the whole day. So how can you manage all of that to ensure equity and equality of access? And again, measuring things. If you don't measure, then you don't have success. And then ensuring attendance. If you don't ensure that learners are turning up to the sessions that are being provided, then you're likely to have knowledge gaps. Now, I make these sorts of diagrams based upon something that someone else, Noster, in this case, inspired me with their way of presenting information. Yes, I still use my Creative Commons license in the bottom right-hand corner. So if people want to use this, you're very welcome to. But attribution, as I say, is important, because when we're working in a world where we're in this together, never more importantly, if we're all sharing online, strong digital citizenship is something which should be modeled by all of us. And so it's important that we reference the people who've inspired us and have helped us get to where we're at, so that if we do see further, if we do have some inroads, if we do make some impacts, if we do have some fantastic improvements in our schools and in all the things we're trying to achieve, it's only right, I feel, because I think that education is a moral industry. We're driven by our moral compass, and our vision and values are so important, far more important than whether we're using a Surface or an iPad. It's these things which really make the difference and bring people with us on our journeys in our schools. So it all starts, I think, by recognizing where we've come from, and then recognizing those people who've helped us along the way, and making sure that attribution is at the heart of the things that we do. Because if we're going to stand on the shoulders of giants, it's important we recognize that. And so Isaac Newton may have said that, but I say 1159, a few years prior to Isaac Newton when he said that. And I love this. This is an example just from the last few days. I presented and helped coordinate a conference on Thursday and Friday last week for the Independent Association of Prep Schools. It was the Aspiring Deputy Head Teachers course, and we had 70 aspiring deputy head teachers come along to the 2-day event and learn from a broad cross spectrum of different presenters, one of which was myself. And one of the tools that I shared in my session to try and reduce workload and help teachers with feedback is this tool by a company called Just Mote. Now, love this. Thank you so much to Mr. Lamb. He loved the idea of using Just Mote. It's a tool that you can use to leave audio feedback in a Google Suite school, in a Google ecosystem. It works in slides, in sheets, in docs, and classroom. And as you can see from the example there, and if you do follow me on Twitter, I retweeted him, so you can see that that's actually a little video at the bottom there, and it shows you how you can record your voice as a comment inside whichever Google tool you want to use. And as he says, what a great tool for quick but effective feedback. I love these sorts of things, because it's fantastic for those students who want to listen to feedback. It makes it quicker for teachers to leave feedback. Schools that use Microsoft tools will be readily singing the praises of this sort of feature in things like OneNote. But it was lacking inside, and still is lacking inside the Google environment. So lovely to see this immediate feedback, and you can have those sorts of feedbacks and things in your schools too. It doesn't have to be something you do at conferences. Actually, sometimes it's the small things that happen in your school that make a difference, and can have that real local contextual impact. And actually, that's one of the things I miss most about teaching in a school all of the time. I love the fact that I get to have a global impact in sharing. Who'd have thought it? When I started my career back in 1997, a few years on, and here I am presenting at a conference in Dubai. I would never have thought that. So, think carefully about the things that you do, and make sure you attribute, make sure you share, and have all those things there. And so I want to share now, before I get towards the end of my presentation, about something that I've been doing in the region with a colleague and friend of mine, Ollie Lewis. We started just around the start of lockdown an initiative called Learn Live UAE. Now, it's been a project I've absolutely been so proud to have been involved in since we started, and many of these people who are popping up in front of you right now have been presenters previously at guest events. They've won guest awards. Some of these people, for example, Philippa Wraithmel, who's on here, Michael Henderson, and others, are presenting at the summit yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But this has been such a fantastic initiative to have been involved in. Ollie himself is presenting. He presented a session yesterday, and he and I are doing a panel session later today with 4 educators from the region as well, asking the question, why bother with edtech? So please do come along for that session. But in a world where we stand on the shoulders of giants, the show isn't about myself and Ollie. We just provide a conduit so that these amazing people can come along and share. I remember particularly at the conference that we organised and were supported by guests. Thank you very much, guests. James McBlain from BSAC sharing about how to best deliver CPD in the new normal, given the situation in which we work. It was a fantastic presentation. And I know from the feedback that he received and the feedback that we saw how inspiring and helpful his presentation was. And in a world where schools in Dubai, many of you in Abu Dhabi, many people who are visiting in the conference today, you will work in a competitive environment. Many of you will work in fee-paying schools, and you are in competition with each other. But I want to pay homage to the likes of James and Dee Saran from Dubai College and Ben Rothwell from Victory Heights and others who are part of the UAE Research Schools Network. It's fantastic to see schools who are ostensibly in competition with each other actually working together, unpicking the cognitive science research that's coming into the fore, and not only sharing things between each other and developing those things. We've got examples on here as well with the likes of Danielle Duffy and Sarah Lamberts, sharing oracy and literacy strategies as part of the UAE Oracy Hub. There are so many great examples of people doing fantastic things, even though they're in competition together, because education is a force for good, and there's more that unites us than divides us. These things bring us together, help elevate us, and help support us to do a much better job in supporting the young people with which we work. And the impact of the Learn Live UAE events that Ollie and I have been doing has been phenomenal. We've had nearly 6,500 views in total, 781 hours watched on YouTube, 8,500 nearly views on Periscope, 10.4 thousand hours watched of self-directed learning from teachers taking control of their own professional learning, professional development, and getting involved in their own professional learning. And that's something I would strongly recommend that you consider doing for yourself. And it's something that has come on leaps and bounds in the region in the past 5 to 10 years. And referencing back the likes of Steve Banbury, Luke Rees from Jess as well, others who've been sharing in this sort of a way for many, many, many years now. It's inspiring to see others working in this way. And so in a world where we stand on the shoulders of giants, it's really important, just reinforcing that point, that we recognize those people who've inspired us and help us to do more with the work in the most important job of inspiring and working with young people. We've got Michael Henderson presenting, we've got Ollie Lewis, we've got Hilary Hunt, we've got Philippa Wraithmel, we've got Neil Statham. Neil, you'd be very pleased to know I pronounced your first name correctly today. These people are doing such amazing and fantastic work in our schools around the region. So as we get towards the end of my presentation, here's the panel that I'm doing later with my co-host Ollie Lewis from Learn Live UAE. But my question to finish off is really, who will inspire you at Guess EdTech? Who are you going to see and hunt out to make sure that you attend their session? And how will your learners benefit? What are you going to take away from the presentations and the sharing at the events? And ultimately then, what will you do? What are you going to take away, and what impact and difference are you going to make as a result of your time learning from, with, and sharing from and with all of the other educators taking part in this important event in the region? So with that, I'll leave you there. I never do drive-by sessions, and I'm always very happy to take follow-up questions, and I'm sure there are some inside the Q&A and the chats today. But please do reach out to me either through the Guess EdTech platform, or obviously you can tweet me at ICT Evangelist. And if you're not on Twitter, and if not, why not? Please do. It is the best staff room in the world. But if you're not a Twitter user or aren't confident about using social media in that way, please do. If you want to follow up and get in touch and ask some questions, you can easily do so through my website, ictevangelist.com. Go through to the contact page and that'll send an email directly through to me. So look, thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you today, everybody. Thank you to Danny and the team at Guess who have facilitated me getting involved in this project, and I hope that my messages today have resonated and you found it to be helpful. Thank you very much indeed.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mark. That was so inspiring and informative. If anyone from the audience has any questions, please send an email to marketing@guesteducation.com or put it in the chat box on the right-hand side. As Mark mentioned, you can also directly contact him through the virtual event platform or through his Twitter accounts and social media handles. You'll be redirected to a short survey once we end the session, so please let us know what you thought. If there are any topics you'd like or suggestions of speakers you'd like to hear from, we'd love to hear your thoughts. A massive thank you to ICT Evangelist, Mark Anderson, and also you, our audience. Don't miss out on our next live session, which will also be a keynote delivered by no other than Steve Bambury, Director of Digital Inception Consulting, coming up at 1:45 p.m. UAE time, so in approximately 10 minutes from now. That session will be followed by the Learn Live UAE panel discussion that Mark also mentioned, and we have many other great sessions throughout both days. So make sure you add all these sessions to your schedule. We hope that you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you so much. Take care and bye-bye for now.